All right. Good afternoon and welcome to another great Green Rope webinar. My name is Alessandra Guyvan. I'm the marketing manager here at Green Rope. And today we have a really great, fun, and full of information-filled webinar for you. CRO secrets, tricks, and treats that actually boost site conversion rates. And I know that's a topic that I'm sure all of us are incredibly interested in, and all of us really want to accomplish is to increase those conversion rates across on our website. Today we have a very special guest. He's an incredible young man, Matteo Favaro. He's the founder and CEO of Blue. He loves online advertising and CRO almost as much as he loves late night Oreo McFlurries, which I think we all can relate to. He's a PPC warrior with a laser beam focus on increasing website and landing page conversion rates, which is definitely something we all need. He's an independent online advertiser and conversion rate optimizer, or CRO, dealing mostly in the B2B space. He is just 20 years old and started his online advertising in high school at the age of 15 for his own e-commerce business. So he's got tons of experience, young but mighty, and it's where I'm really excited to hear everything that you had to say. And how we found Matteo is he actually reached out to Green Rope with some incredible insight on how we ourselves can increase our conversion rates on our own website. And our CEO, Lars, was so impressed with his insight and his tips that he wanted to bring him on so that he could share his insights with our users. So Matteo, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you steal the show.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'm definitely very excited to be here. Once again, my name is Matteo Favaro. I'm an individual online advertiser and conversion rate optimizer. I've been mostly dealing with B2B software companies, and yeah, I'm really excited. Thanks for the introduction, Alessandra. So just to give a quick 1-minute kind of background, just to add on to that, and how I got into the online advertising space. When I was 15 years old back in high school, I kind of started my own little e-commerce businesses. Basically, they were handheld camera stabilizers. So pretty much every couple months, I would get these large boxes from China, which I would then send to Amazon, and I would sell them there. And this is what the listing would look like. But then, of course, I had one problem, as pretty much every business has, is I need to drive sales. I need to drive people to actually buy this as well. So to do that, I first got into online advertising. I first got into Facebook ads, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the aspect of just being able to devise an ad strategy, developing it. And I honestly kind of thought it was just like a video game, to be completely frank. But I soon to just really enjoyed the entire space. And then I kind of wondered, maybe I could help out some local businesses with this. So literally what I just did was I would just go to home service businesses in my town and just ask if they need some help in this area. And so I started helping out a few different clients. This was the first one I had is, this is Vincent Hardwood Floors, another home service business right here. And I kind of just started helping out more and more businesses within the town. And I just kind of kept growing it a little bit from there. So now I'm pretty much only focused on online advertising and conversion rate optimization. So that's as simple as I can put kind of my background and where I come from and why I love online advertising. So the big thing for this webinar is I hope by the end of this, you guys can not only leave the webinar with some very practical and actionable things that you can apply to your own sites and your own landing pages to not only increase conversion rates, but also allow you to look at other high converting sites and really kind of figure out why their sites are very high converting and what makes them high converting, so on and so forth. So without further ado, though, I do want to start getting into CRO. And before I actually dive into the actual sort of principles and as well as like practical tactics here as well, just so we're all on the same page here, I do want to talk a little bit about the underlying power of CRO and why I am such a fanatic over it. I truly think that we live in a time right now where In the future, CRO, or in other words, conversion rate optimization, this is going to be something that is extremely necessary, and something that people, will think that you cannot live without. And that we're kind of in this time right now where there aren't as many people that are very heavily invested in CRO, or in other words, that aren't big participants in the CRO space. So I know I'm going to be talking a little bit about advertising as well. It kind of gives an easy way to understand really how conversion rate optimization works. So really, when we have any sort of website or any sort of online advertising, hopefully this isn't too new for any of us, but essentially you have your traffic, you have your landing page, and then of course you have your close rates, and that is how you drive actual sales or leads. So and I'm going to show you like the power behind conversion rate optimization, and just why, again, I'm such a fanatic over this. Let's say you have 100 people that click on your advertisement, and your website or your landing page for that advertisement converts at 2%. That means that you're going to drive 2 leads from that. And let's say your close rate, just kind of pulling this number out of nowhere, is 50%. So that means you'd get 1 close, and 1 close would equate to, let's just say $600 is the amount that a customer is worth to you. So that's one thing right there. Compare that to if you have that same 100 people that click on your advertisement, but instead your conversion rate is 8%, which honestly, that isn't that big of a jump here, especially the things that I'm going to be mentioning in this webinar today. This should definitely help with increasing conversion rates in this area as well. So again, you would convert 8 leads instead of 2. And let's say your conversion rate, your close rate percentage is still 50%. That means, 4 closes, and that would equate to $2,400. And just like that, again, we made 4 times as much. We've driven 4 times as many sales by just doing a little bit of work here. What so many companies do, which is, I think it's a little bit unfortunate, and I think it's just, again, it's one of these things where in the future people are going to realize this much more, where many people, they don't touch their landing page. They're completely satisfied, or they think they're satisfied with a 2% converting landing page. And, in order to generate 4 times as many leads or whatever, they have to spend 4 times more to generate 400 people of traffic, 400 website visitors. So, you could either do that, spend twice as much, or you can just make a couple tweaks to your landing page and convert much more. So, put simply, having low conversion rates or low quality traffic equates to fewer conversions and leads, fewer sales. It's harder to close leads, lost time and money. Anyone that, kind of deals with online advertising as well will also know that, having a campaign that doesn't convert to its highest potential, unfortunately, is really no different than just taking a percentage of your ad spend and really just tossing it in the trash. So I know that's a very bold and blunt statement there, but sometimes it's a little bit tough for people to really wrap their hand around it. So that's why I'm a big sort of fanatic for CRO, just so we're all on the same page with this. So anyway, I do want to jump into the CRO secrets that we have here. This is going to be both a combination of principles as well as tactics. So again, the biggest thing that I want you guys to take away from this webinar is that sure, you can be able to apply practical things, practical tactics to your landing page or to your website in general to just increase conversion rates. But I'm also going to be teaching like fundamental underlying principles as well for why these things work, so that you on your own or somebody on your team on your own, they can devise their own strategies to increase conversion rates, and so that you can kind of be a little bit more self-reliant with any of your conversion rate optimization experiments, which I'm not going to sugarcoat. You will certainly need to do some experimenting when it comes to conversion rate optimization and whatnot. So anyway, without further ado, first one that is a little bit more of like a fundamental principle here is something what's called a conversion temperature. This is something that I wanted to mention first, just because if you understand this right here, it's very easy to reverse engineer why a landing page might not be converting as well. And when you kind of understand this one aspect right here, everything else almost kind of falls into place, so to speak. So a really good way to think about your website traffic, and this is also true for any of your advertising traffic as well, is to categorize your traffic into 3 separate groups. You have cold traffic, you have warm traffic, and you have hot traffic. This was something that I got from Client Boost, by the way, And really what this means, it kind of sounds like exactly what it sounds like. Cold traffic, these are people who, they don't know who you guys are. You're completely new to them. You don't really have any history with them. So that's who they are. Warm traffic, these are people that might be a little bit familiar with you guys. Maybe they've bought from you way in the past, or maybe these are people that have been on your website before, or they've liked your Facebook page or something like that. People that have that are a little bit more invested than cold traffic. And then we have warm traffic. These are the people that are ready to convert, that are ready to buy. These are any of your current buyers, so on and so forth. So it's really important to understand whenever you have a landing page in particular here, what types of people are you appealing to? If you're trying to, if you know the people that are coming to your site are a lot of cold traffic, and this is also true for an individual page on your site as well, you don't want to ask them for something very big. If any of you guys are familiar with compliance psychology, it's kind of one of those, pretty much what compliance psychology means is don't ask for what you don't have enough compliance or investment for. Another very good analogy or metaphor that I love to say is like, you can't ask someone to marry you on the first date, right? You kind of have to warm it up a little bit and so on and so forth. So, and it's kind of funny that I personally see so many of these businesses out there that the first thing they ask their website visitors to do is to give out all of their personal information and just ask them to take this very huge bump, this huge jump, instead of just asking people for smaller requests that slowly, add up to a larger request as well. So if you don't know what compliance psychology is, I highly suggest you guys try to take a look at it. Do your own research as well. So that's really what I mean by conversion temperatures. If you can understand this one aspect right here, I truly do believe that everything else will almost kind of fall into place. And this is really one of those areas where you can really devise some of your own ideas for, again, why a landing page isn't converting as much, or what you can do to increase your conversion rates much more than what you would expect. So that's one principle right there. The next thing, which is half a principle, as well as showing some examples as well. By the way, I did kind of forget to mention, I'm going to be showing quite a few examples here, even in just a moment right here. So the things, by the way, I'm also going to be mentioning, these are all things that are a little bit more universal. I don't want to mention too many things that are just like only that only work very well for like the automotive industry or something like that. The whole purpose behind this is, again, these are things that on your own you can be able to apply to your site and your landing pages. So anyway, social proof. Again, I highly suggest you guys do some of your own research here as well, but there have been many studies already proving that if you can just make social proof one of the first things that people learn and that people see about you, that has proven to have a very direct positive correlation with increasing conversion rates as well. So to kind of show you a couple different examples right here, I'm going to show a mixture of landing pages as well as just regular home pages as well. So if you take a look at any really high converting site and high converting homepage, almost every single time what you're going to notice is that these companies are going to establish social proof as early on as possible. I'm sure you guys are familiar with something what's called a social proof bar. This is pretty much just a compilation of some of the bigger companies that use you guys. This is something that tends to be a little bit more specific, or it tends to be it's usually a little bit more reliable with increasing conversion rates. But again, going back to that principle, it doesn't absolutely have to be some sort of social proof bar like so. Again, it's a very big common theme to establish social proof as early on as possible, just because it has a very direct positive correlation with increasing conversion rates. But this could also mean you could try to experiment with different things here as well. So I'm sure that if reviews are very important to you guys, usually for B2C companies, reviews could be much more important. If you have 700 5-star reviews on Facebook, that could be something incredible to show as early on as possible, something like that. You could even have badges or awards that people that your customer base would know. The biggest thing is that, and again, this is something that if any of you have read Influenced by Cialdini, or just anything else about like persuasion psychology, you'll know that things that are very familiar with us or familiar to your customers are going to be things that are going to have a bigger impact with increasing conversion rates. So for more B2B companies, that's why having a social proof bar is is something that's done very, very often as well. So again, but you're not limited to that as well. Something else that also works very, very well, which is a little bit more universal here, is even just adding more authentic human images of people that actually use your product as well. If we actually take a look at Ask Nicely's homepage right here, which is going to load up here in a second. This is a phenomenal company, for example, by the way. I would say with conversion rate optimization, I know I'm kind of digressing a little bit here, but the biggest thing is, or something that I love doing, is taking a look at other companies that are big participants in the CRO space, in the conversion rate optimization space, and just try to take a look at what they're doing with their sites and their landing pages, and look for things to model as well. So I'm digressing a little bit there, but you can kind of see one of the unique ways that they established a lot of social proof early on is they have a very large, authentic human image of someone that actually uses their product as well. So I know this isn't, right above the fold right here, which if you don't know what above the fold means, it pretty much means anything that shows up at the top of the page before your website visitor scrolls right here. So the fold would be somewhere right here on my screen. This is where, I can see everything above the fold, but, this is all below the fold right here. But again, just take note of the fact that one of the first things that you see right here is something like this, which immediately elicits a lot of trust as well, which has a much bigger impact on conversion rates than what most people would expect. So I'm sure that now that I'm going to mention this, you guys are going to start noticing this quite a bit more often on these really high converting sites. Generally, these are used for like testimonials or something like this. Even just having like a team photo of your team could also work phenomenally well as well. I mean, I can really just show examples all day long. Big caveat to this is not having necessarily a stock photo. Stock photos won't work as well with increasing conversion rates. Great example with this is actually SimpleSat. I highly suggest you guys try to take a look at SimpleSat's previous or their older website design. If you take a look at the Wayback Machine, I just remember this right now, so I don't have that on me. But for these guys, they used to just have a stock photo right here. And the moment they just replaced this stock photo with an image of someone that actually uses their product, conversion rates for them took a really good boost as well. So again, the big sort of principle here is just the more that you can just make it extremely well known as early on that you guys can be trusted and that you guys are already established, generally the higher conversion rates are going to be as well. So again, the big caveat here with everything with CRO and conversion rate optimization is that it will take some experimentation and iterations, but if you guys are willing to persevere through that more experimentational phase, so to speak, it's a pretty safe bet to say that conversion rates are almost always going to take a boost when you add more social proof. So, obviously there are exceptions, but, that's one aspect. Next thing is something that's also very, very interesting as well. This is something what's called a one-to-one attention ratio. Or I also kind of like to just, say keep it simple, stupid, as well, as we might know that. And really what a one-to-one attention ratio is, it's something that's a little bit more tailored to any of your landing pages. This is actually something that I would say it's one of the biggest things that increases conversion rates for a landing page for any paid ads campaign that you have as well. Although I'll definitely show you how you can apply it to your excuse me. I'll definitely show you how you can apply this to your homepage as well. Excuse me. So if you take a look at any of these really, really high converting sites, and particularly landing pages is what I'm just going to stick on for the next minute here, is really what a one-to-one attention ratio is. It means don't give your website visitors too many buttons to click on or too many separate actions to take on any of your landing pages or even on your website as well, or else you're going to significantly decrease the overall page conversion rate. Another way I can put it is just the more that you can focus your website visitors' attention to just take one particular action, which really should be the more profitable action, in all honesty, the higher conversion rates are going to be. And this is also why if you yourselves just take a look at, again, any of these really, really high converting landing pages and landing pages, you're going to notice that the vast majority of the time, these companies are never going to have a header at the top of their page. They're never going to flood their page with multiple call to action buttons. There's just going to be one thing for you to do on these landing pages, and it's just going to be taking that one action right there as well. I mean, you'll notice on many of these super duper high converting pages, like I can't even click on the logo right here. There's there's only one thing for me to click on, and that is only that sign up button as well. So again, this is something that this is really one of those areas for me where it's like, I feel like I can lead people to the pond, but I can't force them to drink with this. And the reason why I say that is just because, again, this is one of the easiest ways to increase any sort of landing page conversion rates for any of your paid ads campaign. You'd be very surprised to see how much your cost per leads and your just CPA in general will decrease when you just apply a one-to-one attention ratio. So that's one thing. If you're kind of wondering how you can apply this to your homepage, obviously for your homepage, it's not like you can necessarily just take out your header right here, but great example is actually Ask Nicely in this instance. I highly also suggest, again, try to take a look at Ask Nicely's previous homepages they've done in the past, just by looking at the Wayback Machine. This, by the way, again, they're a company that's very big into conversion rate optimization. Almost everything this company does right here is deliberately done to increase conversion rates. So again, that's what I kind of mean by try to find out those companies that are very big into conversion rate optimization or might have someone that works as a conversion rate optimizer on their team. And you can kind of try to figure out, that they're very big into this stuff. But anyway, you'll notice that, and maybe this could even apply to you guys as well. You'll notice that you're not doing this as well, that they have very, very few buttons on their homepage. You'll see that many lower converting sites, they're generally going to have a lot of like learn more buttons. They're basically just asking people to focus their attention away from the main call to action, which is, again, for these guys, it's to just convert to either this ebook or for the demo request right here. So I wish I remembered the exact phenomenon that it's called. I believe it's just called like the paradox of choice. That's a great book right there. And pretty much there have been many, many studies also proving that the more choices that we're given, generally the more stifled and the more stuck that we'll feel. And in other words, why it's called the paradox of choice is that the more options that we're generally given, the less action we're actually going to be taking. So maybe this is something that you guys will already, as you're watching this, you kind of already know, like, man, like I already know that we're doing this as well, that you guys have a ton of buttons on your page right here. But again, like just take a look at this homepage right here. And again, the lack of like all these learn more buttons or like just like these little tiny buttons that ask people to take their attention and focus away from that main call to action button. Those are all things that are going to significantly decrease conversion rates as well. So again, definitely try to keep that in mind. What's the main action that you want people to take on your site and on any of your landing pages? And how can you just double down on that and eliminate anything that is unnecessary? So I know that might sound almost like a little bit too basic, but you'd be surprised how many businesses and how many companies I encounter that they just completely skip that fundamental fundamental principle right there as well. So that's definitely another aspect. Next thing, which a lot of people love to always ask me as well, is the heading. They always ask, how can we have a heading that's very high converting as well? And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. It's very, very hard. I'm not going to give you like a formula, like a one size fits all formula for a heading that converts very, very well. I've personally seen like spreadsheets from like really great copywriters of like their formulas for headings and whatnot. So I'm going to kind of make something that's a little bit more universal here, but that if you can nail this, and really what you're doing with like a header is it's just communicating all the right information to the right person at the right time so that they're more likely to convert as well. So to kind of go to the recipe for a header right here. Again, first thing is, and make sure you definitely mention what you do or what you are as well. Next thing is to mention how you do it. And then the third thing is to also mention like the outcomes that you produce. I know this might sound very much more basic here. Sometimes I'll encounter like business owners or other advertisers that ask me, what are some other like headline formulas that you can give me and whatnot. And I'm a big believer in just sticking with the fundamentals, as usually the fundamentals are the things that are going to drive the most results as well. So I'm always very, very surprised how few companies don't make it past, this first bullet point right here. They just kind of say this aspect, and then they kind of finish it off like that. So you'll notice for any of these really high converting sites, again, I highly suggest that, as you just start looking at other sites online and so on and so forth, almost always these companies that have really high converting pages are going to have at least 2 of the 3 bullet points right here as well. Again, going back to Ask Nicely, again, they say what they are right here, and they say what they do. If we take a look at Help Desk right here, Help Scout, excuse me, again, they say what they are, they say who's it for, and they even say what they do as well. And you can also see that as well on their on the landing page here. Again, it's just a matter of really trying to establish very early on just these few pointers right here as well. And of course, it's much easier, or at least the conversion rates will generally be a bit higher if you have something that is truly unique and something that is, I guess just going back to economics, something that's rare and in demand. If you naturally have an offering that's just rare and in demand, it's going to be much easier to devise a header that is much more high converting. But, obviously doesn't mean that if you have a product that isn't super duper unique, it doesn't mean that like something like this wouldn't work as well. You obviously just want to play around with this. But generally, this is a very, very good formula to help you with a header. And again, this doesn't also necessarily only apply to the header. This just applies to really anything that you can do at the very start of the page, or at least, in other words, when people first land on your page, these are sort of the things you have to establish. Another great book that I'm definitely going to recommend, and this is more for web usability, is Don't Make Me Think. I forget who the author is, but like other questions that people also ask as soon as they land on any landing page is just what can I do here? Why should I stay here? Why should I not leave for another website? And what is this website as well? So that's definitely another aspect as well. So that's the heading. Next thing, which I'll be honest, it's not as revolutionary, or it's not something that you're going to see incredible conversion rate increases, although there are definitely exceptions to that as well. It's something that is very, very reliable and consistent with increasing conversion rates, is something what's called a directional queue. Again, I'm going to show you an example in just a moment here, but really what a directional queue is, it's something that just forces your website visitor or assists your website visitor to focus their attention on a particular part of the page. So when you can drive more attention to the call to action part of your landing page, generally the higher your conversion rates are going to be as well. Great example of this, just to really put this in perspective. And again, I'm almost positive that now that I'm going to mention this, you guys are going to start noticing this quite a bit more often on many other high converting pages. If we take a look at Monday right here, you'll notice very, very quickly that they have these sort of arrows spread out all throughout their site. And almost every time, these arrows are pointing to their call to action sections and buttons. And while I can't guarantee this, or I can't guarantee that this is the reason why they do this, but I can almost assure you that the reason why they do this is simply because it works wonders with increasing conversion rates. And especially with something animated like so, it's impossible to not look at this call to action button as well. And that's why I'm a big fan of adding something like this as well. That's why I recommend it. That's why it's very, very powerful. And if any of you guys even happen to have a heat map software installed in your site, and you add this as well, even after just a couple weeks, depending on how much traffic your site gets, you'll be able to see very, very quickly that a lot more red is going to start filling up in that call to action area. And a lot more people are actually going to start clicking on that button as well. So, and obviously, again, the principle is just this directional queue. Doesn't matter if it's like an arrow or not. Very, very famous example is actually Priceline. You'll see that here that they have a human figure of someone actually pointing to their call to action button and section. And I forget exactly what their conversion rates were, but I know Priceline, their conversion rates took a very, very good increase. I think it was like a 3-digit percentage increase, which that's incredible for conversion rates to increase by. So something like that as well. So it could even just be a matter of like adding some sort of like animated character even pointing at your call to action button as well. Like imagine something like this, but you have someone like pointing at this button as well. So it doesn't really matter how you do it. Again, it's just the more that you can drive people's attention to that call to action button and section, generally the higher your conversion rates are going to be. I see it many, many times over and over again where these websites are going to have extremely low conversions just because you don't even know what you're looking at. They have so many different things going on in the page, so many different buttons to click, and you kind of like land on their page and you don't even know where to start. So this kind of also goes back to, again, having that 1-to-1 attention ratio, but it's just another aspect as well. So that's the directional cue there. Last thing I also want to mention here, which is it's a little bit more experimental, but I've seen incredible increases for conversion rates as well, is something what's called a multi-step form. This is something that's a little bit more of a bonus, and it ties heavily with compliance psychology as well. I hope you guys are going to be just as fascinated as I am by this. And really, before I kind of get into what exactly a multi-step form is, I kind of want to show you a couple examples here with, just some sort of lead gen forms right here, or sign up forms that may look familiar to you guys in regards to asking for this type of information from any of your website visitors as well. The biggest problem with all of these, if you recall what I was saying earlier about compliance psychology, is that you're asking for way too much personal information way too early on, and this is perceived as extremely threatening and invasive in the eyes of your website visitor. If any of you guys have a form like this right here, where you're asking for all this personal information right here and you're advertising, it's a pretty safe bet for me to say that if you have to take a look at your campaigns tracking and analytics, the vast majority of the people, particularly the people that have just come in contact with you guys for the first time, the likelihood that those people are actually going to convert and give out all this personal information up front is going to be extremely low. And again, the biggest reason for this is because, again, going back to compliance psychology, you simply don't have enough compliance from your website visitor to be able to ask all this personal information up front. I'm sure that any of you guys will relate to this as well, that if you come across a company for the first time, the likelihood that you're actually going to give out your first name, last name, email, phone number, company, job title, job function, well, you can just almost hear it like in my voice that it just sounds like you're asking for so much. And especially for the people that have just come in contact for the first time, it's going to be very unlikely that you're actually going to give out all this personal information up front, or the likelihood isn't going to be as high unless it's something that like you absolutely need, right now. So really what a multi-step form is, it's a form that's broken up in 2 or more parts. With the beginning of the form, you ask your website visitors questions that are not personal or invasive or intrusive, and only at the end of the form, when you have enough compliance from your website visitor, do you ask for the more personal information that people are usually much more reluctant to give off at the beginning, like their name, email address, phone number. I'm sure that we can all agree here that those are usually the things that we do not like giving out, especially to companies that we've just come in contact with for the first time as well. So I'm also going to show you quite a few examples. I personally seen conversion rates increase upwards of anywhere from 200 to 300%, which that's an incredible amount for conversion rates to increase by. And I should also definitely mention that that's also taking statistical significance into account as well, if you're curious. But anyway, I digress again. These are just a couple examples that I got from Client Boost as well. But it just kind of also just shows you the power of this, just to give you some examples right here. This is kind of like the multi-step form right here. So again, these for watch checks, they first ask what type of watch you have before they ask for any of your contact information. And these guys saw a pretty good boost in their conversion rate increases as well. Mention, this is another company that you guys might be very familiar with. This is kind of what they used to do on the right-hand side. They would immediately ask for, any leads, first name, last name, email, phone number, and their conversion rates were really low. But now instead what they do is, again, they first ask questions that are very easy to answer, questions that are just not personal or invasive or intrusive. In this case, they're asking for what industry are you in, how many employees do you have, and to be completely honest, mention they don't even need to know any of this information right here. The only reason they're asking this information from their leads is simply because they know these questions are just so easy to answer that so many people end up starting to complete this form right here. And then when the website visitor clicks on the next button, this second part of the form asks for their contact information. And because people have already initiated the form, they're much more inclined to just complete the form and convert altogether. So that's one for like the software industry, but honestly, this has just been tested for all sorts of industries out there. This is more of like home service as well. Again, asking for very low compliance before you ask for the contact information as well. Education here. Again, feel free to, there's also going to be a replay of this webinar. So if you guys really want to, kind of take a look at what these guys are doing, feel free to just go back and pause the video. So this kind of also, I really want you to think about for your own site as well. What are some questions that you can start to ask your, website visitors that are very low compliance, that take very, very little compliance to answer or little investment, things that are very easy. Usually things like drop downs or like multiple choice buttons. Those are great because again, like it doesn't even require you to click. It doesn't require you to type anything in. You just have to, click and you're already halfway done with the form, so to speak. So that's definitely a big aspect to it as well. So anyway, these are kind of like some of the biggest sort of principles as well as tactics that are a little bit more universal with increasing conversion rates right here. If you leave this webinar and you really try to look at any of your landing pages and take a look at your site and really try to figure out how you can try to incorporate any of these things on your page right here. Again, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This will certainly take some experimentation and a few iterations, but again, it kind of goes back to that slide that I kind of mentioned at the beginning where, again, if you're willing to put in just a little bit of time, even increasing your overall landing page conversion rate by a few percentage points is going to equate in a big increase on the back end side of driving more customers and whatnot. So this is pretty much the principles right here. Doesn't mean that there aren't more, but again, these are the things that are a little bit more universal. So that's pretty much it for the conversion rate aspect side of things. Once again, my name is Matteo. I do want to thank Alessandra for letting me on here. It was awesome. Really kind of quick to also talk about sort of like the where my value comes from, so to speak. Again, I'm an individual online advertiser and a conversion rate optimizer. So I do everything from creating and managing online advertisements as well as campaigns. I'm most experienced with pay-per-click. I've found that most companies, particularly in the B2B space, are most effective on Google Ads, LinkedIn ads, Facebook, but there's also the smaller other sites out there as well, like Capterra and so on and so forth. So that's something else as well. I also create beautiful looking landing pages as well. And also, of course, I focus on conversion rate optimization for those landing pages that I build out. And, also that applies to the any of the ad campaigns as well. So, and yes, I did say beautiful landing pages, not ugly looking landing pages that actually convert as well. So that's always the biggest thing as well. So the idea is just over time, with these landing pages that you optimize for conversion, you should be getting more conversions. And, when you kind of combine CRO with online advertising, it's a beautiful combination that just fits so well because over time, again, if you're optimizing both the campaign and the landing page, really what it allows you to do is over time, you can get more higher quality leads at a lower cost, which is like a win-win-win situation for everybody. So that's sort of my aspect. So anyway, it's kind of Q&A time. I'd love to hear your questions. I know Alessandra is also here as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matteo. That was incredible. So much great information there and so much I think that we can all do to enhance our landing pages. And luckily, we can accomplish a lot of that with GreenRope as well. So for all of our users out there, if you do want more information on how you can accomplish some of this stuff within the system, please reach out to our support. I did have a question, and for anyone who does have a question, you can either put it into the Q&A box or the chat box, and Matteo can go ahead and answer those. But to start off, in terms of A/B testing, what are your biggest recommendations for A/B testing for conversion rate optimization?
No, it's a great question right there. So A/B testing, for any of you that aren't familiar, it's pretty much where you test two separate landing pages, together. So pretty much, let's say you have, one landing page. Like if we take a look at, let's go back here. Imagine, let's take a look at like this landing page here on the right-hand side. Let's say this would be landing page A, and then we would have landing page B with maybe just a different heading, or maybe we add social proof above the fold right here, or maybe we add some sort of directional cues, some of the things that I've talked about in this video right here. So it's definitely very, very important to make sure that you are split testing. There are many tools out there that allow you to split test, which pretty much what that means is you have a link for your landing page, but then this software will send you to landing page A. 50% of the time it'll send you to, and it'll send your traffic to landing page B 50% of the time as well. So this also helps a lot with statistical significance, as you want to make sure that a landing page is actually converting better than the other. So I always try to aim for at least a 95% statistical significance as well. So big aspect with that. Otherwise, you won't necessarily know if if a landing page is converting better than the other. So that's that.
Cool, thank you. I did have another question for you as well, and please have anyone chime in as well with your own questions. Do you have any advice or any best practices for B2B versus B2C?
Sure. So it can be a little bit different, but I would say most of the things that I've covered in this webinar, I try to make it so that it applies to both B2C as well as B2B. The thing for B2B is that many times it can be very, very important for other companies to see that you work with their type of company. In other words, if Alessandra, if you run a software company, and I own company ABC, if I see that you've worked with my competitors before, that's a good sign. It means like, okay, people in my niche or in my field here, if they use your product, then I'm going to be much more inclined to try you guys out as well. So I would say one of the biggest places is like social proof. Obviously though, it definitely varies on a case-by-case scenario as well. But most of the things that I've covered in this video, these are things that can apply both to B2C and B2B. They're a little bit more universal as well. So that's sort of that area as well.
Thank you. Cool. And then we did have a question from Stephanie. Stephanie asks, she says, "Hey there, I handle the marketing for a few telecom companies. Because a lot of the language is difficult for readability scores, should I try to avoid these terms on the homepage and leave them for product pages, or does it matter?"
So readability scores, it definitely has a very, very big impact as well. To give you a really good answer, I'd have to kind of take a look a little bit more at what you guys are doing and whatnot. But you definitely want to make sure that your landing page is very tailored to a particular group of keywords as well as ad groups as well. So if you have low readability score, it means that it could be something with the back end side of the page, but it also could be something that has to do with actual copy on the landing page itself as well. So I would just kind of double check and make sure that the landing page is tailored to a particular keyword. A good sort of analogy I like saying is, if someone is searching on Google for, I want to buy a hot dog, and then you have an advertisement that says, click here to buy a hot dog, and then the landing page says, if you want to buy your hamburger, just, click here. You're kind of like, what? Like, it doesn't align 100%. So low readability score could also deal in that area as well. But I would definitely try to check the back end as well. It's a little bit hard for me to say without like taking a look at your particular example though. And if you guys have any more questions, definitely feel free to shoot them in the chat.
Thank you. And Stephanie, let us know if you would like, if you've got more.
Yes, definitely. Feel free to definitely shoot me an email as well here if you have any questions with that. Happy to help out.
All right, it looks like we have another question from Dawn. For businesses, would you recommend a landing page only or a more detailed website?
So it can depend. It depends what your objective is. Um, yeah, it really depends like what you're trying to do. I always like having a unique landing page that's different from the homepage as well. But obviously it doesn't mean that you can't do that. Something that I will see many companies do if they're not sometimes always wanting to create their own landing page is to convert their homepage into a landing page. So again, if you remember what I said about a one-to-one attention ratio, I've seen many companies, which has worked very well for this. What they would do is they would literally just create a duplicate version of their homepage where the only thing that's different is where they would just remove their heading, and they would maybe remove some of the other like secondary call to action buttons, like anything that says like learn more or like watch this video or something else. And again, they would not send people to the homepage from any of their advertisements, but they would send people to that secondary or to that duplicate version of the homepage with just those few modifications made. And I've seen that work very well. So it can honestly depend. It really depends on what those people are, where those people came from. If those people are coming, if you like, let's say you have multiple products or multiple services, and you're advertising for, one particular service, it's generally going to be more effective to have a landing page that's very tailored to that particular service. Just to give you some perspective here, like the way I create any of these landing pages for any new company that I work for is, generally if they have one product, I'll go ahead and create one landing page for them. Actually, like I could just show you one that I finished. There we go, Chile. This was something that, there we go, I finished not too long ago. I'll create like a generic landing page for them, which is, again, something that looks a little bit more, it's a little bit more generic. It kind of appeals to all aspects of it's more of like a generic view of their product. And then I might build out landing pages that are a little bit more tailored to that ad group as well. So if we actually do, let's go here, lead routing software. So it's like their product here is called Concierge for Chili Piper, but within their Concierge product, they have, it can be, there can be multiple different angles. So, many people, when they look for their offering, they will search something like lead routing software or lead distribution software. And you can see that these landing pages are the same thing, but the copy is different so that, again, you're kind of tailoring it to a very particular, angle as well. So I would also say one thing as well. I forgot your name. Alessandra can remind me in a moment that another thing that I also see many businesses do is sometimes your website will either be too long or too short. And this can have also a very significant impact as well. It's kind of a funny analogy or metaphor here. It's a little bit out there, but it certainly is memorable here. And it helps a lot with knowing like how long your homepage should be or how long any of your landing pages should be. And it's it kind of goes that the length of your landing page or the length of your copy should be as long as a woman's skirt. It should be long enough to cover the essentials, but short enough to keep things interesting. So you're free to think whatever you like of that. It's kind of like tongue in cheek, but that will also help you a lot. If you have a product that's very new that the world hasn't really seen before, it might definitely be a little bit more worth to go a little bit more in depth with your landing page and give a little bit more content. It also kind of depends like what type of people you're appealing to. Like this landing page here is super long. This would convert much better for the people who don't know who you guys are, or in other words, for cold traffic. But if we take a look at this landing page here by Freshdesk, it's much shorter. And this landing page here is for remarketing, for a remarketing campaign, which means this is for people that are, the people visiting this landing page are people that are that have visited Freshdesk in the past, and they just haven't bought, so these are people that are familiar with their company, and they just need a little bit more convincing to kind of push them over the fence and convert. So, hence social proof is very effective for something like that as well. So I know I kind of threw a lot there, but I hope it kind of gives you some help in that area too.
Yeah, and to go along with that, we actually do the same thing. We've got longer landing pages for our colder leads and shorter for those that are, kind of further down our funnel. And that's definitely effective. So we have another question from Stephanie. Stephanie asks, sliders on home pages. One of my clients loves theirs. I've gotten it to convert better than it had been before I came on, but what are your opinions on sliders on the home page?
By sliders, I'm assuming you're saying a horizontal slider. So that's actually one of these areas where sometimes I've actually seen that work very, very well. Other times I haven't seen it work as well. Same thing that goes with like having like a video background or like slideshow, like a background or something like this. Again, I would say that it ties mostly very closely with a 1-to-1 attention ratio and a directional cue. If you feel that, and again, that's why I also suggest having a heat map software, just so that you can test this out yourself and you can see very, very clearly, how it impacts having a slider like that impacts your conversion rates. You can see that, are more people focusing on something else that's going on the page rather than the heading, subheading, and, of course, the call to action button as well. So it can kind of depend on a case-by-case scenario. I've personally seen it work well sometimes, and other times I haven't seen it work very well at all. Again, though, I would definitely try to think about that 1-to-1 attention ratio and just see, where are people's attention being, spread out to? Because who knows, maybe that slider actually works very well, with conversion rates, or in other words, people that interact with that are more likely to convert. Again, a heat map software would definitely kind of help in that direction though.
And then we've got another question here. How important do you think it is to fall in line with Google's changes to algorithms?
By that, I believe you're talking about search engine optimization. Of course, yeah, you want to make sure you're in line with what they do. Pretty much everything we've discussed here, these are all things that are nothing here is like unethical or some like weird like loophole. These are all things that are very grounded in psychology and for increasing conversion rates as well. So, obviously it's important to make sure that your landing pages are built in a way so that you're not messing with Google and whatnot. Sometimes I see like very, very rarely I've seen like certain like landing pages that will have like a heading that matches with like the background color so that the page ranks better on Google, but in the long term, it actually kind of comes back to bite them in the butt a little bit. So put short, obviously you want to make sure you're in line with Google's algorithm as well.
All right. Any more questions out there? There was a lot of good questions there. So we don't have any more questions at the moment, but Matteo, I really want to thank you for all of your insight. I think you shared a lot of great tips and advice, and I know definitely some that we, want to implement into our own strategy. For all of you attending, we will be sending out the recording as well as the slides for your review. So if you think you missed something or you want to review it again, no worries. We will be sending that along with Matteo's information as well if you'd like to reach out to him. And again, if you do have questions about how to implement some of these in Greenrow, please reach out to our support team. We're always here to help. And then also next week, we also have our marketing Q&A webinar where we'll be talking about some of these items in Greenrope itself as well. So if you are a Greenrope user, definitely hop on to that and come prepared with questions to go into the platform with. But with, as we wrap up here, Matteo, do you have any final thoughts for our attendees today?
I wouldn't say too much. I just say definitely keep in mind to experiment. There are always exceptions to pretty much everything here. So don't be discouraged. But I mean, if you guys just test, use the things that are in this video, in this webinar, and just kind of also do your own sort of research, try to model things online. Again, just increasing conversion rates even by a couple percent can have a much bigger impact than what you'd expect as well. So no, other than that, I super enjoyed the webinar. I hope it was helpful for everybody. And yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending. I hope you got a lot out of it. I'm sure you did. There was so much great information in here. And again, Matteo, thank you so much for joining us on this webinar today. Super, super valuable for us as well as all of our users. And we definitely look forward to working with you again and connecting some more.
Cool. Sounds good. Awesome, guys. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Take care, everybody. Bye.